And this is
All About Nothing podcast.
And I'm with Danny Hernandez, attorney at law. Yes, attorney Danny Hernandez. Introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm attorney Daniel Hernandez. I have been practicing law since 2016 and mostly family law my entire career. And I started a firm super early on. I opened my firm in 2017 and it's been a great journey, I'd say.
Okay.
One of the big things that my firm does different from other firms is our billing model. And so we don't bill our clients by the hour like most attorneys do.
Mm-hmm.
And just so your viewers and listeners know, right now the average hourly rate for a family law attorney here in Chicago is somewhere between $350 an hour and like $500 an hour.
Okay, all right.
And so it's a pretty big range, but when you think about a family earning $60,000 a year or $80,000 a year, right? They can't really afford these type of rates.
Right.
But it may be in their interest to be divorced or to have their child custody matters resolved. And so our firm is billing at a monthly rate instead.
Okay.
And then essentially we save our clients about 40% when we compare it to an hourly rate.
All right. So a little bit about family practice law. Yeah. Tell everybody what that is.
Yeah. So it's funny because I always get this question and people are like, oh, like wills and trusts. And I laugh because I'm like, it's funny, we always go to death when we think about families for some reason.
Right,
but no,
right.
When I say the word family law, I'm mainly talking about divorce and child custody matters. And our firm helps with an array of family law areas, right? But for the most part, we're talking about a divorce, right? With children or without, or we're talking about a child custody matter where it's just two parents that were never married that have children together.
Okay. So what are some of the misconceptions about family law?
I think one of the biggest misconceptions, especially in the two areas that I just shared, is that women always win in the courtroom,
mm-hmm.
right? That dads don't have rights, and you'll see that some law firms have profited very well off creating an area of law that they call dad's rights. But my experience has shown me that at the end of the day, there's truly no winners and losers in family law, and that the courts really are fair in their their allocation of parenting time and the responsibilities that go along with being a parent.
So what are some of the most common cases that you practice or your law firm practice?
Yeah. So in addition to the divorce and child custody cases, we help clients out with prenuptial and postnuptial agreements. We help a lot of individuals conduct legal name changes. And then another area that we focus heavily on is protective orders.
Okay.
And those are what's commonly known as a restraining order.
Okay. Interesting. Do you get a lot of those? Or you get your good share?
I think I get my good share, and it's one of those things I take those cases even more serious than my divorce and child custody cases because I just picture myself, or I can put myself in their shoes, that they have been intimate with someone, a partner, a family member, right? These relationships are so close, and to think that some kind of violence has occurred that requires them to need the power of the law to feel protected and to feel safe from someone that, again, they were so intimately involved with, right? It's sad. It's sad that occurs, right? But I'm
and
happy
it has to go to that level.
Yeah, and I'm happy that I'm here to help them, right? That I'm here to educate them on the ways that they could get help.
Okay.
And feel protected and feel safe.
How do you personally manage the emotional side of a highly charged case?
Yeah, that's it's such a great question. When I first started practicing law, I like to say I was a baby lawyer. When I was a baby lawyer, I had no idea how to do that. I would come home like super stressed, and what I got myself a therapist in the process, and what I really learned was that a lot of our clients come to us with problems. And at the end of the day, like as attorneys, we're problem solvers, but sometimes the problem that they're bringing us is not legal in nature. And my role here is to provide a remedy that the law helps me give you, right? So now I've learned, number one, to kind of remind myself that the issues that are being brought to me are not mine, right? They are somebody else's, sometimes very emotional issues, right? Given the complexities of a divorce or a child custody case. But the big thing that I have noticed is really trying to tell my clients when they're bringing me an issue that I can't help them with, addressing it right away. Hey, thank you so much for sharing that. I understand how that can implicate your divorce case or your child custody case, but it's not something that I can actually help you with. But I have a resource for you, right? I have a counselor you can go see, or a domestic violence agency that you can go get services from, or whatever it is that you need. And now that I have those resources and I'm able to share them with my clients, it's become a better balance, because now my clients know, like, yes, I can share things with my attorney, but at the same time, he can't help me with everything. He can't help me on how to communicate with my partner, or how to raise my children, or how to discipline them when there's a high conflict divorce going on, right? But there are resources out there and people to help you with that.
That's good to know. And you refer those your clients to some of those organizations and people.
Yeah.
What are some of the most common mistakes that you see during a custody dispute?
I think the biggest mistake that I see is that people deviate from the status quo, right? So, people don't walk into my office every day and they're like, I'm getting a divorce tomorrow and I'm moving out, right? Usually those things, while the divorce hasn't happened yet, but usually the separation has, right? And so they'll separate, and let's say they have this plan where the children are with me one week and, with the other person the other week, and then out of nowhere they file for divorce on their own, and they decide, actually I'm never going to give it to have the children see the other person anymore. And the court really frowns on that, right? Because you've already created trauma to the children, right? Now the parents are separate, now they have to deal with that. You created essentially a routine, and now you're breaking that routine too, right? And so deviating from any status quo, and it doesn't just have to be with children. Financial deviations are bad, right? Like if someone was always paying the bills, then they need to continue paying the bills even through the separation, right? Unless you agreed otherwise.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, and there's a lot of motions. We always call it like a motion to continue the status quo, essentially, is what we file with the court.
So, off-topic conversation. So, does each person need to pay their old bills?
It all depends on your family, right? For the most part, I think most middle-class families, they are going to separate, and everyone's going to be responsible for the bills in their home, right? And if one parent is seeing the children more than another, then they might need to provide some support, right? And every parent has a duty to support their children. And I bet you have a child support question somewhere in there, and I'll explain it a little more later. But essentially, again, everyone has a duty to do those things. So,
how do you see the courts deciding the best interest of the child?
So it's really interesting. My clients and even some of my friends think that this is like some kind of simple approach. It's a simple legal topic, and it's actually not. It's a 14-factor test, and it's a factor test, right? It's not what I call like a very black and white test, right? If yes, then this. If no, then that, right? This is like analyzing 14 different areas that the legislature has said is part of the best interest. But essentially, it takes into account the parents' wishes, the children's wishes, the mental health of the parents, the mental health of the children, the routines that the children have, for the most part, in these broad, kind of broad subject areas.
Interesting. We're going to move on to prenuptial agreements.
Yeah. That's my favorite. I think everyone should get a prenup. I just want to share with your listeners and your viewers out there, everyone should get a prenup.
So tell me, what do you recommend? Like, why do you feel that everybody needs a prenup?
you know, when you really think about what a prenup is, to me, it's a document. It's similar to insurance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you go out and you buy insurance for your new condo or your new home, and you don't expect it to catch on fire. You don't expect a hurricane to blow the roof off, right? You don't expect any of these things, but it could happen, right? And that's how I view a prenup. And essentially, I don't expect any of my clients to get a divorce. But if they did, when they were happy and thinking about their marriage, this is what they thought was fair and reasonable between them, right?
All right.
Because one thing I've learned is that when emotions are running high, when someone has, been cheated on, or especially things like that even drive more emotions, right? People become less reasonable.
That's interesting. You're absolutely right. It's all about the business trips.
Yeah.
It's all about the business trips. How many business trips?
I agree.
Is this really business, or is
exactly? And then imagine someone scorn. You're not thinking the same way, right? You want everything that is fair to you, right? And sometimes you want a little more because someone did something that they weren't supposed to do.
All right. What are some of the legal steps that couples can take to prevent themselves from causing the problems?
I think,
like we talked about, your therapist, or sending a client to therapist or another emotional support organization to help. Do you feel like they should come to you or a lawyer after that, or during or the beginning of that process?
I think they should start at the beginning of the process, right? Because at the end of the day, every unique family is different, right? And everyone is going to have different things and want to take different actions based on their family needs. And so the earlier you can talk to a lawyer, the earlier you can get some advice, some kind of guidance is better than none.
And this goes back or in conjunction with the prenup? Or
So I would say from the prenup perspective, right, the earlier you start discussing a prenup, the better, right? You don't want to be signing your prenup as you're about to walk down the aisle, or that's not recommended, right? But on the divorce side, I always say my clients sometimes are separated for years and they don't seek a lawyer, and you're still married. You're still married. You still have a duty to each other, right? Under the law. And imagine you've been separated from someone for 5 years and you're like, I don't really care that I'm separated. Okay, well, what happens if tomorrow you end up in a coma in a hospital? Guess who's responsible for you? This person you've been separated from for the last 5 years, right? Like, they're your spouse under the law, right? They are your next of kin under the law.
Yeah, because when the hospital calls, they're going to call their next of kin.
Yeah, exactly.
No matter if you're divorced or separated or whatever.
Exactly.
So do you recommend, going back to divorce a little bit, do you recommend once you get a divorce to change your beneficiaries, your get a living trust, or your wills?
I am not an estate and trust lawyer, so I don't want to say exactly what you need from that side. But I do recommend my clients go speak to an estate and trust, and plan that part out, right? Certainly, you'd want to change beneficiaries on items. There are certain laws that do protect if you forget to do that, especially when it comes to divorce. But there's also a lot of case law that says, well, sometimes a parent doesn't, or a spouse doesn't take their ex-spouse off as a beneficiary because they have children together, right? And so, but if you really did want to do that, you should do that, right? You should remove the person because essentially there are laws out there that are going to require, your bank to disperse your funds to the payable upon death beneficiary, right?
Okay. All right. So we're going to trends and modern issues.
Sure.
These are a list of questions I provided myself to ask a professional. How does family law change in the last 10 to 15 years?
Yeah, so in Illinois in particular, we had a lot of changes about 10 years ago. And they had to do a lot with, partially with language, and we had an overhaul of our child support calculation. And so one thing that I will always hear people say is like, custody and visitation. And custody and visitation, what we learned for decades was that people were fighting for custody, and they didn't want visitation because the word makes it sound like you're visiting your children, right? The word itself does that, right? And custody says something like, oh, I'm the custodian of all of these children, right? And so in Illinois in particular, we use the word parental responsibilities to equal what custody is, right? And it is the parent, or both parents can jointly be responsible for the major decisions of a child's life. And those major decisions usually have to do with religion, medical care, schooling, and extracurricular activities.
No pierced earrings.
I mean, it's funny because, I think what would happen before, and this was before I started practicing law, right, is parents would argue about a pierced earring, and they'd say, well, I have the custody, right? And it's like, okay, well, that's not exactly what the law meant, right? Like, that didn't mean you guys don't co-parent, right? But in particular, when it comes to visitation, right, that term, like, oh, that parent only has visitation, it came with a negative connotation attached to it. And so we use the word parenting time, because that's what it is. It's for a parent to have time with their children, right? And it doesn't really matter the amount of time that you're having. That doesn't make the relationship less or more so with your children.
Okay. So going on to the next one, how does social media and digital communications impact divorce these days, or custody battles? Because you see TikTok, you see, everything, Instagram, Facebook, all the social media out there. How has that progressed in your field?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I think this is where people tend to get hurt in with social media, I would almost say, in their cases. Part of it is that this is a lot of evidence we now have, right? Like, you're posting that you're partying every weekend and you're at a party every single night. Well, now I can use that against you, right? Hey, this parent goes out every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday night, and they want parenting time on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday night. Like, that doesn't make sense. Like, are they going to change their lifestyle because their social media doesn't look like it? And when you think about that from the perspective of like creating content, which I think a lot more people are doing around social media, is that if your persona on your social media is that you party all the time, well, that can be used against you later on, right? And if you may not be at a party every weekend. You may just be taking a lot of pictures and then recycling and reusing. But essentially, if you're posting captions that kind of say, hey, me partying tonight, if I need to use that to help my client out, I'm going to use it.
Even if that post was years ago.
Even if that picture was from years ago. Because essentially, you're telling the world this is happening right now. So why couldn't I, or how, essentially, I could convince a judge that happened that day. And quite frankly, I think it's going to be hard for that person to convince a judge otherwise,
Yeah. So is mediation becoming a better option than going straight to court?
Interesting that you say that. I think mediation, for a lot of cases, is a better option. What I have learned from divorce is that it doesn't always work the same way that we want to see it. And one thing that I think a lot of clients have done, a lot of my experience with clients that have gone to mediation, is that they don't do it with their divorce. They do it prior to their divorce. And so they'll spend a year or 2 or 3 trying to mediate a divorce. And then they end up in court anyways, and we have to spend a year or 2 or 3 getting to a divorce. And now your process is now 6 years long instead of 3 or 2 or 1, right? And I really think when it comes to mediation, we can do it together. So here in Cook County, we send people to mediation right away. In most counties in the Chicago area, mediation is a part of the process, right? So you file for divorce, and usually within the first court date, a judge is saying, well, we should send the parties to mediation while we work on these other legal issues that are occurring.
So what if, I'm just using this on an example, what if the couple does not want to, he cheated on her, she cheated on him. They do not want to go, it's over.
Sometimes mediation is not, doesn't work for every family, right? In particular with domestic violence, right? I think that is an area where we don't want two people, especially someone who has survived domestic violence, to have to go through that. Essentially confronting their abuser, right? And then the power dynamics are always going to be mixed there, right? They were abused because there was a difference in power. But what I will say is that I think mediation, you know, we watch a lot of law shows, society does, right? Or at least I do. And we see
Law and order.
See? And we see like what we perceive to be mediation, which is like a bunch of people sitting around a conference room and they're all talking about the case and they're arguing with each other, and that's not always mediation, right? That's more of a settlement conference. And mediation, if done right, is one party is in one room, separate from the other party. The mediator is going back and forth between these parties and really trying to make them come to an agreement, right?
Interesting.
And the beauty of mediation is that the mediator can use different techniques. You know, the mediator doesn't have to go to you and say, your wife wants $10,000 because your wife wants $10,000, right? She can go to you and say, hey, it would be really smart for you. Let's say the wife says, it makes me feel really financially secure to know that I have $10,000 in my savings account, right? Well, maybe the husband's not going to give those $10,000 to her, right? Just because, right? But maybe his value is really about the kids, right? And really about making sure that the kids are always taken care of. And so the mediator can essentially lie to both parties, right? She can go to the husband and say, hey, you know, I think she wants $10,000 and she wants it because of the kids, right? Which isn't exactly what the wife wanted it for, right? But she knows that that's what will get the husband to agree to it, right? And just like that, the mediator can go back until there's an agreement that both parties feel comfortable with.
Okay.
Right? And so it's, one could almost argue that mediation could be a tad bit deceptive, right? But it gets the parties to the goals that they need to be at. Okay. And I'm not a certified mediator, so if any of that is wrong, you know, I'm not a certified mediator, but that's what's been shared with me from other mediators, that they get to use techniques like that. So.
Okay, all right. Are there times when a case isn't resolved outside of the court?
That a case is resolved outside of the court?
Yeah.
Or, we always need to go to court to get your legal divorce dissolved.
Okay.
And so I have heard, in particular with religious ceremonies, that there is, I'm going to call it like a court in quotes there. There is a court, I believe, within the Jewish religion, to have a divorce of a Jewish marriage. I believe the same is similar with Catholics. There's a way to annul your marriage within the church, but that wouldn't legally divorce you.
That's
right?
just from a religious
That's
standpoint.
from the religious standpoint, yeah.
Okay.
And so, yeah.
So, in closing, we're going to close this out, but I got a couple questions for you.
Sure.
And I have to think of these questions.
Go for it.
What are some of the hardest tasks in law school? What makes someone become a lawyer?
You know, I will always say your first semester in law school, it's like you're smart, right? Everyone in law school can essentially, one can argue, is smart, right? They've made it to law school. That means that they were probably near the top of their class in high school, near the top of their classes in undergrad, right? We have intelligent people, and everyone thinks that they're already smart. And the real thing that law school does in your first semester is that it says, no, essentially you're an idiot, and here's why. You don't think like a lawyer. So they take everything you have, it's almost like a puzzle. They like shake the puzzle, they break it all apart, and then your brain gets re-put together into a new way of thinking, which to me is much more logical, right? I don't think we all think as logically as we believe we do, but law school certainly makes you think logically. And even, I know I've had these arguments with my past partners and some friends, right, where I will give an opinion and I'll say, yeah, but the law doesn't support that. And then they'll kind of be like, but what's your opinion? And I'm like, well, I'm a lawyer, so I'm always going to have, like, my brain, my lived experiences have the law embedded in it, have the training of a lawyer embedded in it, so my thought is always going to be in that way, right?
Okay.
But I will say, too, what's rigorous about law school is that, I will always remember dating someone in law school and him saying, like, that's a big textbook. How much of that textbook do you get through? And I was like, the whole thing. The whole, and I was like in shock that I was being asked this. And I was like, oh, wait, in undergrad, we would maybe read like 5 out of the 12 chapters sometimes in some courses, or like you only would take out some.
Yeah.
But I was like, no, in law school, we're going to read this 2,000 book
Page
textbook.
book,
Yeah, we're going to read this 2,000 page textbook in a semester, which is only 13 weeks long. And so
it's not a synopsis.
Yeah.
You can't go online and order a synopsis for this book.
Exactly. And they say that for every 1 credit hour, it's like 4 to 5 outside of the classroom hours that you're going to spend, right? For every 1 credit hour of a course, you're going to spend 4 to 5 hours prepping for that course.
Interesting.
So it's just a lot of time, right? Mm-hmm. You're like really, like in the coursework, right? Like I don't think I did anything but law school when I was in law school.
And that was, 4 years of law school?
3 years of law school.
3 years of law school?
Yeah.
And you're just hit to the books all the time, 24/7.
Yeah. I think you get better at it, right? Your first semester is where you're like in shock. You're like, how do I squeeze in the gym? How do I do anything? How do I have a personal life, right? And I like to say, like, everything, your stress goes up, and then you just get used to that stress level being at that spot, and then you get used to the work, and then you're better at it in the next semester and in the next semester. And by your 3rd year of law school, you're like, reading a 2,000 page textbook is a piece of cake, right?
So tell me, how are your counterparts or the judges? I mean, obviously, all you guys are connected through law school, through graduate school, or social events, and you may come up in court with one of your friends. Mm-hmm. How does that... Do you guys flip a coin, put a penny on the table, and be like, okay, this is your round, this is my round?
No, it's funny that you say that, because as a nice guy, that was one of my hardest things, was to like really argue hard. My like first year of practice was like to be like, oh my God, this is my friend. I don't want to throw my friend under the bus, but I also have to advocate for my client. And it wasn't until I really had a moment where I was like, this is your job. This is your time to shine. And sometimes I do have to say, like, yes, Your Honor, I sent my friend 5 emails and they went unresponded to, right? And that's why we're here arguing in front of you. And that's why there's nothing to negotiate, because they clearly didn't want to negotiate in the last 5 weeks of me sending them a bunch of follow-up emails, right? And it's okay. It's one of those things I say in the profession, we will argue and we will try to get our client what we need, and after a settlement conference, we all might go grab a drink together, right?
Exactly.
And to think otherwise is wrong. And what I will say, and this is kind of going to your question, things that my clients really focus in on is my relationship with opposing counsels. And so it's really funny sometimes the face we have to put on in a courtroom. Like, you could be my best friend and I have to act like I don't know you, because my clients don't understand that, because they're arguing, they're fighting, and they think that I should have that same fight with my colleagues, right? And at the end of the day, like, you're my colleague, they're my colleague, right? And there are opposing counsels that I dislike, right? And that aren't my friends, but there are people that are my friends, and it benefits my client for me to have good relationships with all of my opposing counsels, because that's how we get things done for them.
And when you don't have an opposing counsel that you like, you're like a nail to a hammer. A hammer to a nail.
Essentially.
Boom.
Essentially, right? Still
You're the
within
hammer.
reason.
You're the hammer.
I always say, like, still within reason, though, right?
Yeah.
Like, I always try to have, like, my emotions also need to stay out of this because
Right.
at the end of the day, I have a job, and my job is to get my client either one, the best deal that they can get, or to advocate to them, to the judge, and make the best arguments to them to convince the judge to be on my client's side, right? And so, just because I don't like opposing counsel doesn't mean I'm not gonna agree to a settlement offer, right? And just because I don't like opposing counsel doesn't mean that I'm not going to go, even if I like an opposing counsel, I should say, that doesn't mean I'm not going to go hard in the courtroom because that's my job.
You're the hammer. You're the hammer.
Sure.
You're the hammer for your clients.
Yeah.
So, anything else you want to add about family law court? What type of people or clients that come in?
Yeah, I think in closing, I would just share that family law is in a very emotional place, right? And I know a lot of people want to go at it on their own. They don't want to spend the money for a lawyer. And what will end up happening is that they'll end up getting or taking really bad deals. And then they think that they can undo this bad deal later on, right? And just don't put yourself in that position. Hire a lawyer early on, right? Hire a lawyer like me that's charging flat monthly fees if you're concerned about pricing. Hire a lawyer just to review the document you're about to sign after you've negotiated. Do something to make sure you're protecting yourself, because at the end of the day, you can't undo a lot of what happens in the courtroom.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I first started my business as a photographer, I wrote my own contract. These are the things that I want in it. I went to, all these Google things that like photographer contracts.
Pre-ChatGPT is what I'm hearing.
So, and I was reviewing the contract, that I written myself, and I called a friend of mine who does documentation law or legal law, whatever, on contract law. And he reviewed it for me, and he made tons of changes.
And I probably would have made tons of changes.
He made tons of changes. He goes, "This is a good start, but I'm going to give you the final product."
Yeah, it's really interesting when I've read, in particular, like a contract or an agreement that someone else writes. They use soft language because essentially in communications classes in undergrad, that's what they teach you, is to convince people using soft language. And in a contract, you don't want it to be soft language, right? It shouldn't be that I should pay you $100 to take my pictures. It's that I shall pay you $100 to take your pictures, right? One is a request and the other one is an actual demand, right? And so little things like that where, I've read contracts too where I've signed contracts that were given to me where I've been like, well, this is completely unenforceable, but I'm not the drafter. So, and that business that I'm doing business with should really have someone review their contracts.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, so I'm located in Chicago. I currently have 3 offices throughout the city. We have a South Side office, a Loop office, and one on the North Side. But you can find us at our website, nextlevel.law. And you can give us a call at 312-442-2225. We're happy to help.
And this is
All About Nothing podcast.
And I'm with Danny Hernandez, attorney at law. Thank you very much. I'll talk to you guys later.
Thanks.
That's it.